My name is David Ghatan and welcome to another episode of Light Talk, conversations with experts in their field. Now, the previous episodes have been recorded professionally, but I thought that with my moving along through the region, my travel, it would be nice if I could have more ad hoc interviews and conversations with people that I meet on the fly. And this interview is one of those. I met with David Ghatan, the current president of the International Association of Lighting Designers, who was on a stopover in Singapore. I didn't have much time. I had to organize it quite quickly. He was on a quite tight schedule, but we managed to find a little corner in the hotel lobby, a bit noisy. The quality is maybe not super, but I think it's still very enjoyable to hear about his vision for lighting and lighting design in general, his own practice, but most of all, how the association can help budding lighting designers and professional lighting designers grow and become better in what they're doing. Enjoy. My apologies for the maybe a bit lower quality, but certainly very enjoyable to watch. My name is David Ghatan and welcome to another edition of Light Talk. My special guest today is David Ghatan, all the way from the United States. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Mark. Well, happy to be here.
Yeah, nice for you to be here. Before we go into chatting about other things, I would like to know a bit, who is David Ghatan? Where do you come from? What do you do in your daily life? So that we get a bit of an idea of your person.
So I'm a lighting designer. I'm based in Washington, D.C., although I typically travel for most of my work around the United States and some international. And I'm currently serving as the president for the IALD.
Yes, it's fantastic. So now you're here for that reason as well, because I understand we're celebrating 50 years of IALD.
Yes, it's an exciting birthday for the association.
Yeah, tell me a bit about it. What can you tell a bit about the history of IALD, how it all started, and how we came to where we are today?
So in 1969, there were 8 lighting designers, mostly in New York,
right.
Who obviously it was a smaller profession at that time.
Yes.
And they were friendly, they knew each other, and they got together to have a discussion about the industry, the profession, the ethics of the profession, and how to find identity.
Do you happen to remember who they were?
I know many of the names, but I'd feel remorse if I didn't name them all. So,
we'll check that out.
And then the ILD was founded literally in the back of a German restaurant in New York City, and over the next few years had its full bylaws and incorporation, and then in 2019 we are approximately 1,500 members worldwide.
Right.
That membership is very global,
right,
and truly international now, and we're celebrating the entire year as the 50th anniversary with a sort of culmination birthday party at our conference in Albuquerque in October.
Well, I understand you've reached like 1,500 members or somewhere around there?
Correct. So in the past 5 years, we've seen the membership nearly double.
Right.
There's been a large increase from Europe, from Japan, and Asia in that time, as we've really focused our attention to establishing the I in the name. It really is an international association.
But I guess you got a little bit of help when the former Professional Lighting Designers Association had its demise, because I used to be a PLDA member and I made the switch to IALD, which of course was previously Europe-based, ELDA, and then became PLDA. But there is, I think we can safely say that IALD is now more or less the sole international umbrella organization for lighting designers.
That's our understanding and how we portray ourselves, that we are truly the international association. With respect to the various national associations that exist, for instance, APTI in Spain and and Appial in Italy and some others are really national associations, where IALD focuses on being a more global association.
Is there a relationship between the two? Like you like communicate, or you share
with nearly
information? Or?
I would say with all of the ones that I could list, we have either a friendship agreement or what we call an MOU, and then Memorandum of Understanding, where we share information, we share communications, and we try to collaborate for as possible. In an example, our last conference, Enlighten Europe, which was in November, was in Barcelona, and some of the planning of that conference was shared with APTI, the Spanish Association. So there's a really close working relationship, and we find there's many members who, you may be a member of the International Association, but you may be a member of the local Italian association.
I think you have to. I mean, I'm based here in Asia, in Singapore, and obviously my market is Asia Pacific, and even though I'm a member of IALD, I have a lot of relationships with what's going on in this part of the world.
Sure.
So I think that combination of local and international is really important, because every culture is different. People do things different in their own country, right? So I think that's where your enlightened workshops or seminars, or how you call them, may be quite important, because you then actually go to the countries and can have that interaction.
So IALD has a framework, a global framework, that is based on regions, being perhaps a country or a larger region if you look at Southeast Asia. And then typically within that we'll find chapters.
Right.
So it may be that Canada is a region, but there might be a Vancouver chapter or.
Yeah.
Now we try to let it establish where it's a grassroots establishment. Right. It requires local presence, local activity, some local champion to want to grow that.
Right.
That works very well. If there's a local association, you may not need a chapter, you may just have a relationship. But if you have, for instance, here in Southeast Asia, we have a chapter here, and it is based in Singapore, but the intent is if there's activities or reasons to be in another country, that they're able to host events there.
So right now you've got Singapore, you've got China, from all I know, you've got Japan.
Japan is a region. The Greater China is a region. We have our newest chapter is in the Nordic countries. So a number of Nordic countries all chose to work together and create one larger chapter.
Okay.
There are chapters in the Alpine region, in the UK, all across North America, Mexico City. So it's very.
So if you want to communicate new strategies or programs that you want to implement, how do you go there? You go top down and you go to your regional heads, and then they spread it further, or how?
Well, as I said, it's a very grassroots organization. There is a board of directors. The board of directors is 9 members of the board. They are currently 11 members of the board, currently from 9 different countries and 5 continents. So that depth provides us a very global perspective, while at the same time we have our local chapter coordinators, and they feed information back up. So it's a very two-way communication, right? It has to be. You have to know what's happening on the ground and what's important to the individual members to make broader association-wide decisions. And that communication occurs through leadership training, where all of the chapter coordinators come together and mix with the board members and other leaders in the association for some training. They have monthly conference calls that are truly all the coordinators from around the world are on a call to establish communication, and email makes everything so easy.
Nowadays with internet, it's easy to communicate. So I would imagine you've got some conference calls sometimes with people in different parts of the world.
It's always a challenge to figure out
So
I always start the conference calls with good morning, good evening, and good night to whoever.
yeah, because you don't know where they are. Yeah. So this is your first time in Singapore.
It is.
I understand. And we had a lovely dinner last night. We went to Duo Towers, and then went up to the rooftop and enjoyed a bit the sights from Singapore. So what's your first impression? Because New York, Washington, Miami, I think all these places where you hang out, is a bit different than here.
It is a bit different. I'm lucky that I'm well traveled. I'll tell you, I was FaceTiming with my nephew this morning. And he's 6 years old.
Yeah.
And I showed him the view from the hotel of the bay.
Yeah.
He said, Singapore is very cool.
Oh, that's what he said. But he meant cool like cool, not cool like cold.
No, but cool like heat. So I would agree. I was able to walk around a bit today, and that was warm.
It is. It was today a bit warmer, yeah.
But
the thing is here that it is Asia, but it's not Asia, because it's a very developed country, very westernized. You can find everything. You can speak English everywhere. If you compare that with Hong Kong, it's already a step more towards the Chinese Asian world. And if you go to Shanghai, for argument's sake, or Bangkok, then you're totally immersed into what a real Asian culture is. So I've operated from here now for the last 30 years, and I find it very easygoing, very easy to link up with other parts of this region. But it still is a very westernized world. And when I come to Bangkok or Jakarta, then really you are faced with the real world, I would say.
And I've been fortunate. I've been to Shanghai. I've been to Tokyo.
Yeah.
And certainly language is a barrier when you go to those countries. At least for me, I found just in my now almost one day here it very accessible. I never felt so. That is some of the Western approach. It's also a language approach. And
yeah, but if you relate it to lighting, because obviously that's what we're talking about here, there is also the issue of quality, right? I think that's one of the biggest things that we are facing here. In the US, I would say everything is regulated, standards, all that kind of things, right? But here, it's sometimes a bit more challenging. Not necessarily in Singapore, but in some of the lesser developed countries. Quality standards are not always there. People have different views and attitudes towards what quality means. And what I feel as a lighting designer in this part of the world, and that's maybe something that you will come across over the next couple of days, is how do we communicate that quality standard that we are after when people's attitude sometimes is not exactly in that area.
We have the same challenges in North America as I have in my projects in China and my projects in South America through the years. It's ever present. That quality and quality assurance, and I think that it's twofold, or at least twofold. One is in the quality of the design and the design approach, and the standards that we hold ourselves to as lighting designers.
Right.
And the second is in keeping the integrity of that design through the performance and the quality of the product. And the quality of the product isn't to say you get the brand name product. It's that at least my personal ethics tell me I'm designing something to last. I want it to have a life to it and a product that I know sustains that and doesn't have to be thrown away in 2 years. And I find that the cities and the countries that I've been able to travel to where I have the most objection to quality are those where the projects are not designed to last that long. There's a pace to the country, usually because it's a newer development or it's still in development that they're sort of turning over. So even just walking around today, I was at large locations. I was at the National Gallery. I was walking through. You can see a quality and an intent. You were able to walk me through one of your projects last night, and you can see that
but
they spent the money on the right product.
These are exceptional clients. What do you do with a client who tells you, okay, your product, your downlight costs $100, way too expensive. I prefer to have a $10 downlight and I replace it 5 times over the next 10 years. It's still cheaper to me. What answer do you have to that?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's their money, right? So you have to advise them that a low quality product with poor glare control, poor optics, virtually no dimming quality, that these types of products, yes, they may be less expensive and you could replace the product, but you will find a loss of revenue in your location because you've created...
Yeah, but their mindset sometimes...
They're not.
I know exactly what you're saying.
I mean, we go through all of that. We go through all the arguments, and honestly, we try to find the right clients, right, that can appreciate it. Yeah. And I have no problem telling them at the end of the day that they get what they paid for.
Yeah, of course they do.
It's true.
So have you noticed any cultural differences over the last maybe 24 hours, I guess?
In lighting, I don't know, actually. Lighting is an interesting thing that I will say. I was sort of surprised for coming to an Asian country, because I've been to several now, that color, temperature, and glare control seem to be present here similarly to the United States, where I would say in Shanghai everything was...
that's about how much light
was 4,000 K or above, and LEDs right at the surface. So that was surprising to me.
But we have a bunch of good lighting designers.
Yes, well, there you go. But also just, I was a little surprised by just walking around. Everyone, there's a lot of people out on what was a hot day, but nobody walked in a straight line.
No. Sometimes it can be so busy that we call it human bowling.
Right, you're just a lot of that. So that's New York is a little like that, but most cities in the United States, people sort of organize to a side and jet through.
So tell me a bit more about your Enlightened program. You're aware I was involved with PLDC that happened in Singapore last year, which is also like an educational platform where people learn about lighting and the good quality and the benefits of good lighting design. And I would imagine Enlightened, I've never participated in an Enlightened program to my... sorry, I should have done that.
No,
but I haven't done it yet. It will come. But
please come.
I would be more than happy. But what is there a difference? Is it a similar sort of approach, or do you have another direction that you are trying to push?
So the Enlightened conferences are, and they begin in the United States about in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
They started in Europe on the even years. In Europe, which happens to be the same years as Light and Build.
Yeah.
This was our third iteration last year. Enlighten Asia occurs on the odd years, and now is in its fourth iteration, I believe, which is happening next week in Tokyo, and it's been consistently in Tokyo. In Europe, it's traveled around. In the United States, it travels from city to city. The conferences now are typically about 400 to 450 people. They're very
nice group.
Very boutique in their scale and their approach. There is no trade show portion, so no display of product at all. The attendees are at least 50% lighting designers, and then you have manufacturers, you have representatives of the manufacturers, you may have some architects, and then a good portion of students. Also important, and an initiative that was started a number of years ago was an attention to emerging designers, people within the first 5 years of their careers who, what we were finding is their bosses would go to the conference, but you wouldn't have this next generation coming. So,
which is so important.
Finding ways to support that. So you get this very well-rounded group, a very different experience and perspective. There's a 3-track process to the conference where there's an art track, a business track, and a professional tools and and a business track. And so you have seminars. You don't have to pigeonhole into one.
You can
go
choose,
around, but that helps to sort of organize the topics. And then we build very long networking breaks between each seminar, because it's meant IALD's focus, and specifically with the Enlightened conferences, is about community and connection.
Right.
We're trying to build the greater community of lighting designers, and a branch out, the ring out from that
really
is
to strengthen the
profession. Both ways, right? You can't just be a profession and ignore the fact that you have manufacturers that need to be a part of this.
No, they have to.
So you have this larger circle with only 450 or so people at a conference, with lots of time to talk to each other, similar events. It starts typically in the United States it starts on a Thursday night and goes through Saturday, end of day Saturday. It's always about that 2.5 day time frame, and I find them to be. You come away very energized. You've heard different approaches to things. There's usually a number of panels.
But the speakers are mostly lighting designers, or can they be experts from other industries?
There have been experts in other industries. Most of the seminars are lighting designers or lighting related. There's typically at least one keynote speaker from outside of lighting to open the session, and then recently we've begun doing a keynote at the end as well. And it could be anybody from an artist to the closing keynote in Barcelona was a lighting artist for Pixar.
Right.
So she came through. So
I think it's important,
inspirational,
because we have the design and specifiers group, of which lighting designers are one. We have the technology part, where we have all the manufacturers and people that are involved in developing lighting technology, and then we have the client pool, which could be the developers, the property owners. So somehow there needs to be a link between them. Right?
So these conferences don't typically focus to the developer, right? So or even the architect specifically. So with IALD, we kind of have a dual mission. We have a specific mission statement, but dual focus in our achievement of that mission. And one is the internal, which is about building and nurturing community and connections, and the external, which is about fostering the profession and advocating for the profession and for lighting design. So using those two, when you talk about an architect, that's kind of blending, right? They're a little bit on the inside, they're a little bit on the outside.
But when you start lighting design,
when you start to look at developers and business owners and municipalities, that's a little bit toward the outside, right? And so the conference is much more inward focused, although it's not exclusively that. It's just that's the sort of perspective we put on it in our efforts.
But in order to promote the profession, we need to promote also the profession as a legitimate practice for end users and property owners and developers to include in development or projects, right? Because we feel that sometimes there's a lot of education to be done. They say, well, what does a lighting designer do that an electrical engineer can't do?
Sure.
For argument's sake.
And so you may notice I'm wearing my pin. So this is my CLD pin. I achieved my CLD a few years ago, and that's the Certified Lighting Designer program that IALD sponsored, has and continues to generally sponsor, but it's somewhat segregated from the board of directors of IALD, and from it has its own it has its own board and commission, and they advise on the structure of it, the continuing education portion of it, and set that tone, and then it has a double-blind reviewer process. So when the CLD was developed, it did a broad survey of the lighting industry, and not just out to IALD or professional lighting designers as we defined it then, but also to clients, to architects, to several thousand people globally.
But it sort of certifies the profession. It guarantees you a certain minimum quality level of what you're going to get.
And the survey went out and basically said, define a lighting designer. Tell us the things a lighting designer must have. So the CLD has 7 domains of practice. The domains have been tested. We invited a psychometrician who is literally the person who writes certifications. The woman who was our advisor through this process literally wrote the book on how to do this.
All right.
But we developed these domains of practice. These are categories that can change over time as the profession evolves, but they define what the things that we believe a lighting designer does today, from ingenuity to sustainability to goals and outcomes. Well, and I think smart and IoT will evolve into that. Technology is a part of that, and it requires certification requires continuing education.
It does,
and you every 5 years will have to submit for recertification. Now you don't have to resubmit your portfolio and your domains. You just have to show that you've maintained your credentials. Now that right now there's only 50 or so designers globally who have submitted and been approved for it. I know there's about 100 applications sort of in process, and it's growing.
I heard some voices saying that why would we not use the CLD as a benchmark to allow people to be part of an association? It means you have to keep performing, because some people, they become a member, and then once they're a member, they're like, I'm still a member, but they don't really keep it up, right? And in order to maintain the quality of the association, is there somewhere something to say that they should be able to keep it up over the years?
Well, and I think there's often a lot of confusion between a certification and membership. And not just with IALD, I would say the same when PLDA existed. Many people believe that their professional membership in those associations was a type of credential. And the reality is, when you look at a governing body and you try to go and advocate to them to show, here we have a credential, they have a rigorous process for what it entails. And so the CLD was built in that framework. Now, because our associations and IALD specifically have existed for 50 years, and the CLD has existed for basically 4 years, 3.5 years at this point, membership sort of took the first step. And we don't know. The future is open to decide if they converge or not. What you can have, well, let me say it this way: you cannot have an association where your membership serves as the credential. You potentially could have the opposite. But who knows?
No, it's just a thought, because people become member in the early days and then they're still a member. But I think the idea of keeping up and maintaining your level of professionalism, I think, is important. Certainly in a stage in a time where so much technology changes are happening, so much demands are changing from a lighting designer, that if you're not to keep up, you risk to
I would say so. Even with an IALD membership, part of your membership renewal and the sort of attestation you put forth when you renew on an annual basis is that the majority of your time is spent as an independent lighting designer. It's not the same as continuing education, because there's no, I went to this many seminars, I've learned this, but it begins that process, right? It shows that you're practicing, somebody is paying you for the service of lighting design, and that shows that you're active.
I think it's important. Absolutely. Now, you mentioned briefly Light Fair, which is also an activity that IALD is involved with.
Correct.
I have been only twice to Light Fair over the years. Mostly I go to Light and Build. It's closer by. My family is in Europe, so it makes more sense.
And it's a different experience.
It's a different experience, absolutely. Size-wise, it's a bit different. You've been to both.
So Light Fair is...
What's your
Light Fair,
take on it?
this year for Light Fair, it's the 30th anniversary of the trade show.
Right.
IALD is a partner with the IES in North America and the trade show manager called IMC. And it does change cities. It will be in Philadelphia this year. It will be back in Las Vegas next year and continue a sort of bi-coastal process. Light Fair is approximately 650 exhibitors and just shy of 30,000 attendees.
All right.
There is a conference that goes with it. It spans over 3 days of the trade show, 5 days including the conference, and it's, I would say Light and Build is an experience, right? It's every 2 years. The booths are large, the space is large. You can't see all 13. It may be more than 13 buildings at this point. You can't see all of it.
Definitely more than 10 halls. Yeah.
So, and
it's quite big.
And Light Fair is contained within one convention center. It is large. It's not typically all in one exhibition hall, and you have scale with it, but. It is important in North America, at least, that the product that is there, but it's also a mix, and you see a growing international market. I would say LED is a part of that, because what I have found through my career is, I used to go to Frankfurt, and the product I would see in Frankfurt, I would say, oh, I'll see that in the US in 4 years.
Yeah.
It was
that sort of gap?
And now I think the gap is very much shrunk, and in fact there are products I see in the US that I then see in Frankfurt, because at this point we're all working with.
Well, I think
with
it has to do also with the fact that we're moving to software. We go from hardware to software, from products to services. So it also means that you have your Silicon Valley. So I would be surprised that the move to software means that you may get an edge at one point of time.
And so it's a very diverse trade show, Light Fair, and concurrent to Light Fair, the IALD hosts its awards dinner.
Right.
So it has the award presentation, which is the IALD International Lighting Design Awards, which are quite rigorous and at a very high level. And it is also at a dinner that is the main fundraiser for the IALD Education Trust. And the Education Trust services, their mission is to connect pre-practitioners, meaning students and people who are not yet lighting designers but are beginning their lighting design education, to practicing lighting designers. So making that connection and growing the profession.
This brings me to the question about the huge changes in technology that we've seen from way back when I started. I was dealing with fluorescent tubes and halogen lamps and things like that, and now we have people that are lighting designers and that know nothing else than LEDs, right? So what is your take on the new generation lighting designers that only know LED? That's their bread and butter. How is it going to evolve over the next coming years? What impact does technology have on our lighting designers?
Well, I think it's still important that a designer respect that an LED is just a light source. It will be really the only light source for a while, but that is a light source, and that the 100+ years of professional lighting, if you go back with IES, not to their founding, but really several hundred years, almost 1,000 years, with the development of optics and control, that we don't lose that core understanding that you still have to control lighting, you still have to make the lighting perform, to create quality spaces that eliminate glare or minimize glare, bring out texture and architecture and really craft the space. Now, what we find is that that's only a portion of what a lighting designer in 2019, 2020, and beyond actually has to do. We now have to know much more about software than we ever.
Well, isn't that
thought we
also
would.
something that influences designers today? Because they can rely so much more on computers and calculations that you sometimes wonder whether they actually put in some thought rather than have the computer tell them what it is that they need to do. Right?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, that's the danger of software. It's accessible, and we live in a time where design is so accessible to the average consumer.
Yeah.
Even if you just look at the popularity of the design programs on television, there's a much more sophisticated audience now looking at design than I would say there was 20 years ago, or 40 years ago, or 50 years ago. And the tools to achieve that are so much more accessible. I can download SketchUp for free and render a space, and you know, and I can walk into IKEA with my complete SketchUp space and buy my room.
Do you think there's a now an opportunity for lighting design programs on TV? They have architectural programs and cooking programs. Why not for lighting? Sure. Now, we have our T-shirts on because we are celebrating this tonight. We're on our way to an event that IALD is organizing here with the local chapter, in which we're going to celebrate 50 years of IALD. What's in store? What are we looking for the next 50 years?
So for me, I think the next 50 years of lighting in IALD are continue the same approaches of advocating for the profession, establishing. I would say the profession is established, but now it's communicating that outwardly and growing the community of lighting. So I think lighting, uniquely to the design trades, is very much a family.
Yeah.
Here we are. I mean, we met yesterday, and we're already this person in common.
It's
a small world, but it's so you need to keep that connection. What we have to define is that lighting design and quality lighting design is important, and regardless of a league of software and technology and all these things that clutter the environment today, that the performance and the quality of that lighting design has to lead the charge in the space, because it renders the space, it makes the space comfortable and inviting, and all the things that we intuitively know as lighting designers.
There's a lot of space invaders nowadays with the Googles and the Amazons and the voice controls and you name it. So there's a lot of things happening.
And just because a luminaire is in the ceiling and has power on it doesn't mean everything else has to be with it. And who knows? You know, they have so much power that they could simply say, we need a receiver every 2 meters apart throughout the ceiling, and that's going to be a light fixture.
All right.
Right? They have that power to say that, but nobody. My opinion is nobody would want to use that space. So we have to fight the battle to ensure that lighting design and lighting quality leads that charge and be the leaders of that conversation.
David, I think we could chat for another hour. I think we've got some exciting years ahead. A lot of things are happening in our lighting design profession. Thank you very much for having this chat for me. And let's go up to the party.
Sounds good.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Ja,